Welcome everybody to the June Telco Village POA Board meeting. My name is John Orr. I'm the president of the board this year. I'd like to welcome everybody. As always, we're going to start with approval of last month's meeting minutes, and I'll look for a motion to do that. Nobody?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Mike, any changes, comments to the minutes as written?
Yes, I believe it said that on the vote of the financial audit report, I said it says I was dissented. I just abstained because I didn't have enough information.
Okay. Karen, if you could make that adjustment. Anything else? All those in favor of approving edited minutes? 7-0. Okay, so now we've got opening remarks. As always, these are my personal comments, not necessarily the comments of the board, so I take privilege in having this couple of minutes. What I'd like to do is actually correct or clarify some of the comments that came out in the town hall last week. First off, there was some comments regarding some survey data, and it was stated that 83% of villagers think water rates are too high, 97% want a second opinion, 80% want a pause in the fees, but they failed to obviously talk about how they conducted this survey. I was not aware of any official survey, nor were any of my fellow board members or POA staff. And it turns out these were next door surveys. I found several of them out there. And they got maybe 300 to 400 responses. But you know, the validity of a survey of 300 or 400 people, you cannot extrapolate that to infer the feelings of 11,000 people that live in the village. So, you know, I've, as my fellow board members know, I've got a passion for surveying and polling. I taught a statistics class at a university level for several years. This was a big part of that course, is how you effectively conduct a survey that has statistical relevance and allows you to have a relatively few number of a sample size and extrapolate to a larger population. So what these types of surveys are, they're called voluntary response surveys. And Karen, if you go to the next slide, this is excerpts of a textbook I used for that course, but basically these types of surveys are inherently biased because you typically only get responses from people that have strong opinions. So you either hate it or love it. That's the typical who responds to voluntary response surveys. And again, it's also you're only soliciting responses from those that happen to be on Nextdoor that day or two that the survey goes out. So these you could never take this survey and extrapolate to say that's the feeling of 11,000 residents. And there was also a reference to Lowell Russell and his tally of the buy-in bill. Since he was relying on residents to reach out to him either by phone or email, it too was a voluntary response survey and subject to all the limitations of stated up here. So I just wanted to put that out there that there's been no official survey that can tell you what villagers think on any of these subjects because like the water rates are too high. Well, I think the electricity rate's too high. I think groceries are too high. You put a survey out there, I'll say, yeah. My electricity bill is way more than my water bill. But anyway, so just wanted to clarify that, lest anybody think that's an accurate survey. What else about the town hall? People want to lecture us on how a bid process works. They assume that we're clueless and we have no idea what it means when we get one response that's high. We have a bunch of people supporting us in the different advisory committees, including PSAC, that have spent their entire lives in the contracting business. I've spent 2 decades in the contracting business. Mike Lackey, more than that. Matt, a lot of folks up here have spent a lot of time in the contracting business and know how a bid process works and what it means when you get a high bid. So anyways, that was enjoyable to get that education. What else? So I've been made aware that there's a propaganda piece disguised as a newsletter that's been being sent to residents. Basically, it turns out that, it's less of a newsletter and more of a one person's opinion that would not have access to the complete information. It's being emailed to visitors to villagers without their permission. And I would suggest that if you're receiving this and don't wish to, that you either unsubscribe or better yet, report it as spam, because Karen, the next slide shows that the platform that this is being sent from has very strict anti-spam guidelines. And what's the definition of spam? It's an email that's been unsolicited and bulk email. So we know what unsolicited means. You have to affirmatively consent to getting it. Bulk means you get more than one. So this publication would certainly comply with both of those. And the platform that's being used to send this asks you to forward the message to them at the email address on the screen there so they can address it. Anyways, the last thing I was going to comment on was, there's a lot of loud voices right now that are trying to control the narrative in the village. And I can tell you that I've reached out to several of the loudest voices in the village to meet one-on-one, to try to fill in any gaps in their knowledge, give them more in-depth information, that might help assuage their feelings towards, the negative feelings towards the board or the POA. But in the end, they really, none of them were interested in data or facts that did not align with their current narrative. Really kind of, in the end, reminded me of mainstream media. And one person actually told me they had made it their life's mission to attack and destroy the POA. And my only thought is, life is too short, and you want to spend it doing that? Most people move here to enjoy their retirement. And then another comment that kind of blew my mind is that somebody admitted that they write more and more incendiary and outrageous posts on Nextdoor to solicit a greater response, because they measure how effective they are on Nextdoor by the number of comments and number of likes they get, as if that means anything to anybody. So it's just, we've tried, I think all of us have tried to answer the questions and concerns of villagers. We provide these open forums. In many cases, they turn into shouting fests and accusatory comments. Anyways, I just getting tired of it. We're going to have to start enforcing our guidelines that we put up there every time about being respectful, keeping your comments to 3 minutes. We're not going to allow that level of disrespect for neighbor on neighbor to occur in these public meetings. So with that, I'm done with that. And I'm going to make a call an audible and push the open forum to the end. You saw we had a very full agenda, and we've got some important things to discuss that may actually change the narrative a little bit. So I'm going to go right to Judy to give us an update on the reserve study.
Gonna go back and check my words, make sure okay, let's see. I always like to make sure I'm gonna start off in the right direction, and it's usually not. Aha, I got it. Yay. Okay, so this presentation will walk us through the key planning behind our water and sewer infrastructure strategy, reserve funding model, and the water sewer infrastructure fee recommendation by the FAC. We've had a couple of meetings, workshops with them recently to discuss these issues, and so each of these topics have been reviewed and discussed extensively with the FAC, and this presentation outlines the FAC's recommendations to the board. Our goal is to explain the reasoning and assumptions behind that recommendation with a strong emphasis on maintaining long-term financial stability and ensuring the reliability of our infrastructure. Okay, so what has changed between when we started this back with the original TAP presentations and today? Since our last major planning update, several key assumptions have changed. First, we are forecasting reduced project costs and more manageable timelines for some of our larger infrastructure investments. Second, we've adopted a zero funding approach for several long-lived asset categories such as roads and underground pipes based on current maintenance strategies. And finally, we've updated our operating cash flow forecasts which now reflect stronger financial performance than we had projected a year ago. All of these shifts factor into the reserve study and our current funding outlook. So we're still in the process of finalizing the updated reserve study, which will kick in at the beginning of 2026. But as for our approach, for 2026, the POA management, which is all of the directors and Matt and Jim and myself, we have worked closely with facility advisors. They are the ones that are prepared the original reserve study and performed the update, to update the detailed asset list with experience-based estimates for useful life and replacement cost. A key change is the assignment of a zero reserve funding to certain major asset categories like roads, underground pipes, fairways, and greens, based on the assumption that high maintenance standards will continue. If that changes, some of these assets may need to be added back into the reserve study funding model. We've also shifted from a static $10 million reserve target, which is known as a baseline funding approach. That is also a very aggressive model that opens you up to a lot of risk, to a more flexible model aiming for 70 to 100% funding of included assets, and that is known as the full funding model plan. A fully funded approach gives us greater long-term stability and lowers the risk of needing to seek special assessments, borrowing, or deferring necessary maintenance. And I want to explain that, what full funding means. If you have an asset with a $100,000 replacement cost and a 10-year estimated useful life, you are considered fully funded if, let's say in year 3, you have 3/10 or $30,000 saved in your reserve fund for that asset. So that is considered fully funded in year 3. You do not have to have the full $100,000 in the account from the beginning. Some risks and realities. We are operating in an environment with increasing uncertainty. Several external risks could significantly impact our financial position, and many of these are outside of our control. Construction inflation and project costs remain volatile, and we consider this to be one of our greatest risks that we face right now. Again, the bid environment, we had one bid on the big project and we don't know the final decision that will be made on how to pursue solutions for many of the projects yet, so that remains a big risk for us. Construction inflation and project costs do remain volatile. At the same time, we're anticipating a decline in revenues tied to build-out, like ACC fees and tank installation revenues. We're also heavily relying on LUB and TAS for long-term feasible infrastructure solutions, which adds another layer of uncertainty to our planning. That revolves around our hope to be able to not have to consider stink tank solutions. Additionally, there's general agreement that we would maintain a no new amenities policy without separate specific funding in the near term. This helps preserve financial flexibility, but will require continued spending discipline. And finally, while some major asset classes have been assigned zero reserve funding, even the best preventive maintenance program can't eliminate the risk entirely. If unexpected failures occur, we may face unplanned expenses without funds already set aside to cover them. And this is also considered to be of vital importance by the FAC. Some key assumptions and planning conditions. So as of the end of May, and you'll see me talk about this again when we get to the financial presentation for the month, the Water Sewer Infrastructure Asset Fee Fund had $3.2 million in it, and we anticipate that June will bring another $490,000 to be added to the fund. These funds were collected specifically to support TAP infrastructure projects. The balance will be utilized by, if not utilized by the end of 2025, will carry over and remain restricted for use on one of the approved TAP projects. Our financial model assumes that water sewer rate margins will continue to contribute significantly to the funding of capital and infrastructure needs. These margins are not being used to fund general operations. In fact, the opposite is expected to happen in the near term through the heavy project years. General reserves will be needed to supplement water sewer surpluses to fully fund planned infrastructure investments. If future projections indicate that water sewer funding shortfalls or cash flow concerns come to pass, we'll need to be ready to consider a range of options, including water sewer infrastructure asset reinstatement, borrowing, user fee adjustments, special assessments, or project deferrals. And maintaining flexibility and willingness to take these kinds of actions in a timely manner will be critical to sustaining long-term financial stability and infrastructure reliability. So here's a summary of the recommendations from the FAC. Based on this overall picture, the FAC recommends that the board approve the suspension of the $80 water sewer infrastructure fee on July the 1st, 2025. However, the FAC will continue to emphasize the importance of continued annual cash flow monitoring and readiness to revisit funding strategies if conditions change. The 2026 reserve study reflects a major shift, I'm reminding you, from a flat $10 million minimum to a fully funded model with a target of reaching 100% funding status for included assets by 2030 and maintaining the reserves to that level. While the approach is more responsive, it assumes continued high standards of maintenance and related staffing, especially for major asset classes currently assigned zero reserve funding. This recommendation is coupled with the key understanding that we will not be issuing refunds for previously collected WESAF fees, and any remaining balance will be applied to TAP infrastructure projects in line with the original purpose of the fee. So that concludes my overview of the current reserve study update and the FAC's recommendation regarding the WESAF. And we do intend to, as I mentioned, the reserve study is not finalized yet. We're 90 to 95% there, and at some point in the near future, we will plan to provide more details to the public. So the presentation is TBD. And now, at this point, I'll turn the discussion back over to the board for consideration.
Thank you, Judy. I guess with that recommendation, I'd like to make a motion to suspend indefinitely the WSIAF fee effective January 1. July 1, sorry.
I'll second it.
And I guess with regard to comment, I'll go first. I don't know, a few people might remember that I was the only dissenting vote when this was put in place. And I've, quite frankly, worked fairly diligently in the background to get to this point today. And I really want to thank Judy and Jim and Matt and the FAC. They put in a heroic effort in a short amount of time between getting the reserve study first draft back from FAI. A couple of weeks ago, I think Mike came to me and said, I don't think we're going to make it by the June board meeting, and thought about it for a minute, and I said, that's not acceptable. You guys got to get it done. We agreed on this at the beginning of March that we would have an answer in June. And so we all, put in a lot of effort. And as far as my effort, mine was more of riding these guys like a rented mule to get it done. But we did. Personally, I've probably been in 10 hours of meetings in the last week on this topic alone. So it was a full court press. And oh, by the way, we're in the middle of some pretty heavy lifts. In addition to this, we got a major accounting system upgrade we're right in the middle of. So it's not, doesn't go unnoticed that the extra effort that went into this, Judy. I appreciate it. And Jim, I know you spend a ton of time on it. It's in the FAC as well. So
Team effort all the way around from you guys as well.
any other comments?
I'd just like to thank the mule team for showing up and pulling the wagon for us. Thank you.
Nothing? Okay. All those in favor of the motion on the table? 7-0. Motion carried. So as Judy said, there's a lot more to come on the reserve study. That's a much different picture. We're going to do a TVN video, where you could take more time and go through a more in-depth discussion on what changed and what it looks like now and what fully funded means. It's a completely different approach. We got rid of all the things that personally I didn't like and had been calling out for years. Back in 22, I was saying all the flaws in it. So we corrected all that, and I think we've got a product now that is a very good management tool that we can rely on. So anyways, more to come on that. Next up, we're going to have Scott McCrae dazzle us with some Tanasi updates.
Thank you, John. So for those of you that have been over at Tanasi, either playing golf or driving by, I'm sure you've seen a lot of activity has been accomplished. A lot of things have been done in the last couple of weeks. We're still not out of the ground, but we're getting close. Over the last couple of weeks, we've placed over 200 cubic yards of concrete for the pro shop footers, and we've been tying rebar and putting forms up for the walls. Just as a little bit, we tied 27,000 feet of rebar in those walls. Next week, we will be pumping concrete in. We're planning right now, assuming some good weather over the next couple of days, to put 290 cubic yards of concrete into the walls. Just to give you a feel, that's 30 truckloads. We have one of our concrete supplier has dedicated on Tuesday his entire concrete production to us on all 6 of his trucks. So we'll be running 6 trucks in and out with the pump truck doing that. We did complete the boring under Tellico Parkway for the new fire water line. Those of you that were in Tanasi Shores and Tomatli Shores, I think, yesterday, we did have a minor little problem with that. We had one bolt not quite installed properly on a valve, and our gasket blew out, and so we had to shut the water off for about an hour and a half. We did get that corrected, and everything is finished there. We installed the cart path along the pro shop, from the pro shop to the starter shack, and we will be putting a similar guardrail in around behind the 9th green where it gets really steep there, heading down toward the docks. That particular area, we should be putting that in not 4th of July weekend, but the following weekend, so the 11th, 12th of July. Just a quick little photo here. That's the forms going up around the wall. We should have those completed today. We'll be straightening the walls and bracing them. They're starting to do the bracing this morning, and we should be ready for concrete next Tuesday. Here was just one photo of how they the steel casing that they put under the Tellico Parkway, and that's where our fire water line is going. So for those of you that saw the activity over there over the last week, and then that's the machine that was used for that. And what they do is they just pushed it through, and it augers out the dirt and collects the dirt, and we removed it from there. Just a quick little update on the TAP projects. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Scott, can you just, for everybody's benefit, I know you mentioned this at the town hall last week, but talk about the timeline on Tanasi, given the weather delays that we've had and what the current expectation is?
Yes, certainly. Sorry, I forgot to do that. Right now, because of the weather delays that we've had, the cold weather in January and February, and then the really rainy month of April and May, while we only had about 8 or 10 days of rain in May, it always fell during the week, and usually Tuesday or Wednesday. So we are running approximately 60 days behind schedule. And we're looking at somewhere around a second quarter of 2026 start opening for Tanasi. We are looking at everything we can once we get under roof to see what we can do about bringing that back. But at this point, it will be doubtful. I think on the other thing too is to date, we are up to date on change orders. We've had 8 change orders. Some of those were no-cost change orders, mostly for getting drawing submittals updated and all of that. So we got all that squared away. The ones that did cost the fire water line and things like that, we are still well within our budget. So there's no change to the guaranteed maximum price. So we're still maintaining our cost. Matt's going to go into a little bit more on what's next for the main pump station, but as Judy mentioned, we did have our bid opening May 29th. The single bid we got was from Southeastern Contractors, and we met with them and Jacobs Engineering Group last week. We did discuss options of why was the cost so far out of line with what we had estimated. A number of things, obviously the uncertainty about the tariffs, other issues such as the requirement that we had in the specifications that they could only shut the main pump station down for we could only tolerate a 30-minute downtime. That was a little bit too restrictive, so we're looking at that. We are working to refine this a little bit better and having a meeting next week with SCI to discuss potentially some cost reductions there. One of the things that I think surprised a lot of people was the increase in the cost of materials. Jacobs Engineering did have cost estimates in November, December when they gave us their estimate. Some of the items went up 200 to 300% between November and when these bids came in. Electrical equipment, piping, some of the big items, controls, and also it was much more than we had anticipated.
So it wasn't adding margin to their bid, it was material costs.
Most of it was materials cost. There were a couple of other things. It was, as I think we mentioned, it was a short bid period, so there were a couple of things where the contractor said, oh, I might have actually double dipped here where I got a bid on these valves from somebody, I got a bid on these valves and other valves from a different person. I might have accidentally put both in. So he was going back and cleaning up his bid. Very willing to work with us, very good contractor.
I guess, Scott, the other thing that you can comment on is the impact of what was in the bid proposal or what the RFP in terms of a timeline, and that's clearly had an impact on some of the bid value.
It did, and we're looking, and we do have a meeting, and I think Matt will discuss this in his presentation. We do have a meeting with TDEC and the grant administrator to get better clarification on that. Also, the hard date of having to be finished by September 30th. We have to be substantially complete. We've got till December 30th to complete. That was not accommodated in the bid process, so we are going back and relooking at that. So we'll know more in another week after we talk with the contractor again and after we talk with the grant administrator. I think the other key thing here is the I&I reduction efforts. Basically, we've analyzed the data that we've been getting, and while we've had a lot of rain, one of the things that I found very interesting, I didn't realize how many microclimates we had here in East Tennessee, and there are times when we've had torrential downpours at Tanasi or Tokwa and nothing at Kahite and vice versa. So the data so far is not conclusive. There are some where it looks like there's a reduction. There's others where it doesn't look like any reduction at all. So we're going to continue. We are continuing to collect data, and we'll continue with our analysis. Our inspections and remediation efforts continue. We are continuing to inspect. We've now gotten to date. We've done 1,966 total inspections. So if we have a total of 5,600, we're about 33% done. So we are moving pretty aggressively toward that. We are continuing to put on the extensions on the tanks where we identify them, and we're replacing cracked lids where we do find those. The other thing we are noticing is that the inspectors have found 12 tanks where they had inoperable pumps and no high-level alarm. So we are obviously repairing those as we find them and making sure that everything is working before we leave the site.
Hey, Scott, quickly, how many of the 1,966, are you going to get to that here, have been remediated?
437, I believe, or 463. So we're about 25% done on the remediation, about 33% done on the inspections, Mike. We're running right now about 75 or 80 tanks that we have identified for remediation that we haven't gotten to yet. Two issues. One is we did run out of lids. We ordered them. We ordered another 100, and the reason we ran out of lids, we actually have replaced more lids this year in the first 5 months than we've used in the last 2 years. So obviously, you start doing inspections, you find some issues. We ordered 100. The manufacturer sent the wrong lids. So he is drop shipping us some new lids and manufacturing the rest, and we'll get that. So when it rains, it pours. The other issue is one of our contractors who does a lot of our work for us on the installations and all, passed away a couple of weeks ago. So our team, the Public Works team, has been picking up all of the work that he had been doing for us in addition to their day-to-day activities. Like this morning, we had to deal with an overflow at the Tanasi Shores pump station because a squirrel popped one of the breakers and caused a power outage to our pumps over there. So the guys are doing, I think, a tremendous job and being a little shorthanded right now. Okay? Thank you very much. I really appreciate everyone's time.
Well, with that, we wanted to have a little discussion on what, next steps are with the main pump station. Scott alluded to what's kind of happening in the background. Let Matt expand on that.
Scott said a lot. I'll dance a little bit around some of that, just to say we had a couple of board members, myself and Scott. Some of us were on teleconference, others of them were in person. And, you're fortunate when you have a contractor who's willing to open up their books and say, look, this is here's how I put the bid together, here's where the money's at, here's where it's not. Fortunately, we had a contractor who was willing to do that. They're certainly under no obligation to do that. We learned a lot in that meeting. I was not attempting to keep a mental count of what may be on the table, so I'm not going to speculate for you. But you are generally talking about some easings of time and schedule, both when you start and when you finish. And talking a little bit about specifications, Scott alluded to the tie-over process during which there's some bypass pumping that's required. We talked a lot about that and what's appropriate and what would be a reasonable period of time and flow to be accommodated. We talked about labor and all those kinds of things. I'm just probably going to bring it in for a landing by simply saying I think we're still approximately a week out from having some information. My view at this point is nothing lost by having a meeting with the contractor. We will learn something. Maybe it comes in at a price that starts to make some sense. Maybe it doesn't. I don't really know. But in my view, providing that information to the board, to PSAC, attempting to find some sort of recommendation and let the board discern what it appears to be the next valuable step, but asking the board to do something in advance of some information's not a smart move. So I still think we're a week, maybe a little bit more than that out, not when we would have a construction contract. I don't mean to imply that. I mean to imply we have a scope, we have a price that the contractor might live with, and then there's a point of decision to figure out a path forward. So I really don't have anything more than that, other than we'll hang in there and the board will get some information, probably a recommendation from PSAC, and we'll see where we're at.
Any other discussions on this?
Yeah, the question I have is one I've been thinking about and speaking to, and that is the rehab cost. So the original decision was made based on rehab 2.9, new 3.5 with a $2.1 million grant. I'm understanding 2.1 is probably out of play at this point, so now it's just new versus rehab. My recommendation would be to, while this is going on with SCI and Jacobs looking at the new, why aren't we looking at having some other engineering companies come in and look at just the rehab cost of the main pump station?
Well, I think the primary response to that would be the board has voted that building new is the chosen design. If the board chooses to go in a different direction, that's obviously their prerogative, but as it stands, that has been the direction of the board. And I feel like to make that decision, whether we're going to talk new or we're going to talk rehab, the first piece of information you would want would be what really is new going to cost us. And then I think you face a decision about, do we still love this new design, or is it too rich for our blood and it's time to go in a different direction? Second comment would be, by the time you attempt to engage another engineering firm, you attempt to provide them with a scope of services that envisions a rehabilitation of the existing. And by the time that study and scope is done, the 2 points of information are not going to line up. Your information about what a new pumping station is going to cost is going to show up a whole lot faster than anyone can design something related to a rehab. They're just, the two aren't going to line up. That's why I see vet the new pump station and then make your decision about whether to rehab or not. All those things are on the table. There's nothing that is happening right now that has hemmed the board into a decision. And I guess the final issue would be, if you're attempting simultaneously to design a rehabilitation and the board ultimately makes the decision to stick with the existing design, you've presumably paid some design fees to get to the bottom of it. And in fact, that would end up to be a waste of money. So I feel like the board is hanging in there probably for a week and a half, not more than, I don't suppose, 2 weeks, to have some information, and everything you're inquiring about is still in the board's prerogative to make a decision.
Joel, just one other comment that I would make on that, and that is the rehab does assume a lot of the equipment and piping that was part of the new is also part of the rehab, and those costs, based on the discussions we had, would have, all of that stuff would have escalated just the same way that the equipment has. So if we were to go back, it's not 2.9 versus 8.5 or whatever that final cost would be. That 2.9 has gone up just as much as the 3.5 and all. So I think, following up to what Matt said, please don't think that the rehab price is anywhere near 2.9.
Scott, you mentioned taking a look at substantially complete for the grant.
Yes, sir.
So what do you think the odds are that we can, it's still in play to get the grant money?
It is still very tight. I wouldn't want to commit one way or the other. I think a lot of it has to do with, a lot of things have to fall in line. Part of that is this meeting that we're going to be having with the grant administrators in the next, I don't know if I don't think Matt scheduled that meeting yet, but Mitch got back to us and said he wants to do it in the next week or so. So if they will allow us to modify what is substantially complete, what do we have to have done, I think we can then work with the contractor as well to say, this is what we think we can get done. Can you do this by September 30th, finishing by December 30th, so we can meet the grant deadlines?
And I'm assuming the grant deadline, you can't request a variance.
That is a federal law. That's appropriated money, so no, we can't change that.
Had to ask.
So then I guess to summarize, when we get this response back, are we going to have a urgent meeting with the board to review that? And as I said, I would, based on what that result is, I could be asking for us to be looking at a rehab.
Understand.
Okay, with a different engineering firms. LJA, because they work with LUB, is their wastewater, and C2RL, because they work with TASC with wastewater.
Understand.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're up again.
I'm up again. So, for general manager's report, we were going to talk a little bit about Kahite fire coverage. In the last 2 weeks or so, members of the board, generally Ed Grolleman, I think John Orr's been involved on a couple of different occasions. We've met with a number of different fire chiefs. Met with the Tellico Village Volunteer Fire Department Chief, Jerry Doherty. We talked with the mayor and the fire chief of Von Orr, and also had a meeting with, I just blanked on his last name,
Zach Perry.
Zach Perry, Chief Perry from the Hopewell Fire Department, and Kahite resident Mike Click. I think Mike's here today. And really spending a lot of time trying to understand fire service in general, understand a little bit about what the various restrictions that a lot of fire departments face. I learned a lot about Von Orr, and even a paid fire department has its significant limitations. And so at this point, when Ed Groleman and I met with Chief Perry and Mr. Click, we had a very productive discussion about a services agreement with Hopewell Fire Department that is exactly the same or very similar to what we have with the Tellico Village Volunteer Fire Department. I've provided Chief Perry with that, the Tellico Village Fire Services Agreement. We talked a little bit about just generally trying to understand what would be the best thing. When you talk a little bit about better fire service, and to some degree, to me, it's like curing cancer. Yes, we would all love that. But figuring out the best and cost-effective way for the residents to have better fire protection is not simple. To that end, we supplied a number of different questions to Chief Perry to kind of say, help us understand. Clearly, the Hopewell Fire Department has a response area that's greater than Kahite, and they've got to balance all those things. But if there's a desire for better fire protection in Kahite, how can you do that? How would you provide staff? How would you provide equipment? How would you provide funding for all those different pieces and parts? I think at this point, the answers to those questions will go a long way to leading the board to understanding some solutions. We talked about some things conceptually about how Tellico Village could be involved. And I thought it was a very productive discussion, and I think both parties learned a lot about what we're facing. And I think at this point, the ball sits in the Hopewell Fire Department's hands to sort of answer some questions and see if they can point a flashlight in an otherwise dark room and see if some conclusions can be drawn about what might be the next viable next steps.
Matt, I agree with you. We're trying to work with the Hopewell Fire Department. We're trying to get an idea what fire protection is in a rural area. And once we get more information back from Hopewell, we can then take the next steps.
Okay. Now, I guess the next one on the agenda is the policy revision topic. I don't know, Beth, if you want to lead that, or you want me to?
I can just real quick. We're not finalized with all of our red lines yet. We are still working on it, so we'll get that posted to the website once it's been approved by the board. But what we wanted to show is the original policy, and I just put in red some of the information that's just not either complete or is incorrect. This policy is from 2003, so you can imagine it's quite outdated. And as John said in January, us going through the policies is to make sure things like this haven't been missed over the years. So one thing you'll see is we only speak of the yacht club, and as of last year, the POA brought on all food service in-house, and that's not always been the case. So we need to add Tokwa, Kahite, and Tanasi. Also, you'll see under Chota, it says that all beer purchased must be from Chota staff. Well, we don't sell beer at Chota. I'm not even sure when that happened, way before my time. And so we're just going to be updating some of the incorrect language. If you want to add anything to that, I mean, that's really basically it. And we'll bring this back before the community next month for the final updates for approval.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to approve at this point. We were hoping to get to that point, but like I said, there's so many competing priorities right now. This is not number one priority of updating this 22-year-old policy, but it's part of the process we're going through. So again, it'll be posted publicly before it comes to the board for a vote, so that there's opportunity for comment we don't envision really any change to the current policy that we've been operating under, even though it wasn't written, of no outside alcohol in our restaurants. That's just, something that's been in place for a while now, and we don't envision changing that. But we got to clean up all this stuff here and get a policy that's a little more up to date. So, no action today. Let's see, next up is balanced scorecard update. Got Otto Stutz here from the Long Range Planning Committee. You're going to walk us through it?
Thank you, sir. Just happy to be here this afternoon. Thanks for all you do. Balanced scorecard is a status brief on where we sit right now. A lot of effort's gone into this from the Long Range Planning Committee. Balanced scorecard team consists of Phil Brenner, Virginia Kendrick, Dominic Adriana, and John Vila, along with Joel and Matt has been part of this as we've gone along to try and develop these things. So I'm going to jump right into it real quick. Showed this last month. What is a balanced scorecard? Well, there are 4 perspectives, obviously customer, financial, internal processes, learning and growth, meaning employees. And what are we trying to do with this? We're trying to drive fundamental changes, fundamental management changes through metrics and identification, implementation of efficiencies. So I showed you this last month, and you can see that the mission and vision is up top from 2021. The values are on the bottom. Our goal is superb property owner satisfaction by empowering the POA employees and improving processes across all departments. You can see it starts on the bottom, the base being the employees. We talked about that last month, and we want to empower them to come up with good ideas. Good ideas start at the deck plates and go up through the leadership, result in financial enhancements, and the ultimate goal being putting our customers first. We hadn't shown you any targets or initiatives last month. We're going to kind of go into a little bit of measures or targets last month. We'll go into measures here in a second. But these are summaries of the strategic objectives that are in these ovals. And I just want to show you, I'm going to step through these really quickly, that there are words behind all of these as to what we intended to each one to mean. They're draft words. They can be changed. Words are important, but people need to understand that there are definitions behind this. So this is internal processes. You saw customer and financial. And then the last one is learning and growth and investing in our employees. So this is really the big slide for the day and the column of measures. What I wanted to talk to on this is that we have draft measures right now. We're working with Matt to identify targets for each of these. Some work still needs to be done on methods to collect measurements for each of these measures. So how are we going to measure all these, as the targets have numbers to them, how are we going to actually measure those? Some of these things are in place, some are not. So for example, we don't have a customer service or a customer satisfaction survey baseline right now. We need to do that to develop a target for that. The same thing for the employee satisfaction survey. Other things are, preventive maintenance tools may be required to go ahead and track preventive maintenance across all of POA property. So some of those methods are still to be developed. We're willing to, we're happy to help wherever we can from a long-range perspective. Yeah, let's go to the last slide. The next steps here are we're going to continue to work with Matt to refine the measures and targets in order to standardize organizational strategy and goals across the POA. I know that a lot of departments constantly innovate internally, but they're not always recognized for their efforts. And sharing of the best practices throughout the POA helps everybody. So the scorecard is kind of designed to facilitate that process as well. Our next step would be to introduce this along with the targets to the department heads answer any questions and internalize feedback, make it better. And then after that, the department heads would go to the next level of managers. As I said earlier, the real innovation happens at the deck plates, at the guys who are doing the work, guys and gals who are doing the work day in and day out. They're the ones who know how to make the process better. So it's to internalize the strategy and goals with them so they understand what we're trying to achieve, make the entire process better, and let that bubble up to the leadership for improvement. And then obviously this would be this would be updated annually. So we believe it's a valuable tool to affect positive change for property owners, empowering POA employees, and improving overall organizational efficiency. And the Long Range Planning Committee is standing by to help in any way needed and subject to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your work on it.
Well, I guess we're moving right along. Back to Judy for round two.
Our cash balance is still looking good. We have $35.3 million in there at the end of May. That's an increase of $4.5 million since December. We are earning a weighted average rate of 4.45% at the end of May on our reserve balance and 3.5% on much of our operating cash. Our balance sheet remains strong. We have total assets of $76 million. That's up $7.5 million since the end of December. Our total liabilities are $21.2 million. That's up $3.8 million, primarily due to increases in unearned revenue over there on the bottom right-hand side. Our debt-to-equity ratio currently stands at 16%. That's a little bit of an improvement since the end of 2024. Our accounts receivable and allowance for doubtful account on the top right-hand side of the spreadsheet. The health of our AR remains strong. The ratio of our allowance balance to the AR balance is 36% this month. That's an improvement from 41% at the end of December. There's some information on the suspended accounts there in the middle of the page on the right-hand side. The balance due on suspended accounts, those are accounts, again, more than 90 days past due. The current balance is $743,000, representing 37% of our current accounts receivable balance. There on the bottom, the unearned revenue, the current balance is $9.7 million. The two biggest components of that are the utility assessments for the tanks that are in the ground and not finished yet, and for collected, unspent water sewer infrastructure asset funds, and together those represent 59% of the balance. Looking at the account balance for the WESAF fund, we started off the year with $1.1 million in there, $1,113,000. $2,317,000 has been contributed to the account through May. We didn't spend any more this month, so as of last month, we had $304,000 spent on 3 projects, and we will continue to see that amount, $304,000, represented as earned revenue on our income statement, while the remainder of the funds collected are still in that unearned revenue balance that I just showed you, $3,123,000. Additionally, the account has earned $32,475 of interest income in 2025 and now has a balance of $3,159,000. Looking at our income statement, we finished May with a gross profit of $13,508,000, which is $301,000 better than the forecast. Golf and utility tank installations are the primary contributors of both the variance in both the revenue and the cost of sales numbers. We beat prior year gross profit by $648,000, and the primary contributors to that result are assessment revenues and water and sewer revenues. Our total expenses through May totaled $9,550,000, which were $452,000 better than budget. The primary contributors to this result through the end of May were wages, which were $115,000 better than budget, and maintenance expenses, which were $253,000 better than budget as well. Most of that was from the various public works departments, maintenance of sewer lines, common property, but golf maintenance, rec, and food service also have some unspent maintenance expenses for buildings and equipment. Our other income and expenses are contributing $700,000 favorably to our budget variance through the end of May. $304,000 of that comes from revenue now reported as earned for having spent those water sewer infrastructure asset fees on one of the 5 TAP projects. And interest income is also $280,000 greater than budget, as we anticipated spending our money a little more quickly than we have on those major infrastructure projects. Our net income through the end of May totaled $3,776,000. If we add back depreciation, our net surplus was $4,843,000. This is $1,454,000 better than budget expectations through the end of May. And again, I want to point out that the year-to-date variance is roughly 50% from operations coming from that excess gross profit, favorable variances for maintenance and salaries in the expense category, and then the other 50% comes from other income, which is represented and covered by that WESAF revenue, gain or loss on sale of lots and some golf equipment, and our interest income favorability. So it's basically the variance is 50-50 from operations and non-operation activity.
Judy, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
The $253,000 of maintenance expense, is that just a timing thing? I mean,
It's, a lot of it could be timing, but there's a piece of it that's in there for those sewer and water line emergency maintenance expenses, and we always hope that we're gonna capture most of that as savings and we won't need it.
so
But
is
there's
that-
also timing in there for docks, some repairs and planned preventive maintenance projects, for docks, building repairs, equipment repairs, et cetera. Does that answer your question? And then we'll look at the net surplus or subsidy by division, net of reserve spending. You'll see the same number down there, that $4,843,000 of surplus year-to-date, and how all of the departments contribute to that result. So far, we have spent $3.9 million on reserve projects, leaving us a remaining net surplus for the year of $906,000. And here's the overall picture of our reserve spending. We have a budget, including carryovers, of $21.7 million. We have authorized spending on those projects of $16 million, and the bulk of that is Tanasi, $10.4 million there. And divisional spending results, again, total $3,937,000. And with that, we have one funding request for the month from Public Works. Back to you, Matt.
I'm going the wrong way, as usual. Rats. It's all right. What we envision here is for those of you that may have a packet in front of you, I think it's $32,375. Sound good? request. There is an emerging idea of partnering with LUB to install what would become a dedicated wastewater line underneath we call it a lake, we call it a river, I think it is a river, a body of water, that would bifurcate our waste from the other waste that is collected at the care-in pump station by LUB. What you effectively have there is you have Tellico Village and you have other LUB customers who are pumped through the care-in pump station who are competing for pipe space. And the difficulty with that is when LUB is pumping some of their other customers, Tellico Village waste does not get through or only marginally. If Tellico Village is coming through, and particularly if we are sending an inflow and infiltration load, we generally keep them from getting into the pipe. So what this envisions would be, as I said, a separate dedicated line. This partnership is only at the very infant stages, would generally envision LUB using their consulting engineer to perform what's called a preliminary engineering review. It could be referred to as a 10% design. It will identify different locations where a separate dedicated line could be installed. It will identify cost and the means by which different people would connect to a dedicated pipe or use an existing. But in any case, the idea would be to bifurcate the waste so that Tellico Village waste can make it all the way to the Loudoun Utility Board wastewater treatment plant without any sort of being stopped at a traffic light or having to compete for pipe space. At the end of the day, that's a long explanation for if this could come to fruition, in all likelihood, as far as we understand at this point, it would eliminate the need for a wastewater storage tank in the main village. And so this partnership has been vetted by legal. We have an MOU that just basically says it's their consultant, it's LUB's consultant. We are not signing the consulting agreement. It is their consultant to manage. We're simply making a 50-50 contribution, so the total cost of the study is $64,700 and some change. And we are simply contributing $32,000. Interestingly, we would be involved in this study anyway, because LUB needs our data and needs to understand what we're sending and at what pace. We're choosing to contribute because it's a partnership, and second of all, because there is benefit in us being able to see the results, offer feedback on the results, and make sure that we can see a path forward with LUB. Where it may well get interesting, and this is not a decision for today, I don't mean to claim as much, but if this partnership were to continue, we're estimating an estimated price of about $6 million for this project to be implemented. Now, this study's going to tell you what the cost estimates are, but sitting here today with some napkin math, we're talking about $6 million. If we were to continue with a 50-50 partnership, that would mean a capital contribution from the TVPOA to LUB in the realm of something in the neighborhood of $3 million. What we've got to be careful of and mindful of, and LUB is aware of this concern, is if you're going to make the capital contribution, you need to be insulated to some degree for what's called cost of sales increases. Cost of sales increases generally come from a utility owning an asset and recognizing I've got an asset, I got to maintain it, I've got to operate it, and I've got to effectively reserve funds for its replacement. When Tellico Village entered into the agreement with LUB for the construction of I call it an elevated ground storage tank on the water side, Tellico Village did not contribute capital funds. And the future cost of sales have been showing up ever since, and in all likelihood is a gift that keeps on giving. In this particular instance, we're going about it, at least preliminarily, in a different approach. Of contributing capital, at least to understand what this project looks like. Once you understand what it looks like and what the potential cost estimates are and understand and verify the benefits as we perceive, you can begin to have a conversation about cost of sales. But ultimately, it's going to be a board decision about whether some understanding can be arrived at as to cost of sales. I'm just highlighting a future conversation. This is not a conversation for today. What is envisioned is simply a 50-50 partnership to learn enough about this project to discern whether it makes sense for Tellico Village to be involved financially on the front end. In all reality, I want to make clear, LUB may choose to do this without our help. It just will mean cost of sales in the future. And I do want to make particular note, as part of this contribution, we are going to be able to see the study, have a copy of the study, and even if we didn't, it's an open public record that they would have to produce regardless. I do recommend moving forward with this. I think it makes some sense to partner in this way. What happens after this is just a story for another day.
John, I'd like to make a motion that we approve Matt's request for $32,375 for a preliminary engineering report.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I guess my only comment on it was, my biggest reservation was the cost of sales that you mentioned. If we're going to contribute up front, we don't want to get hit on the back end. And I'm glad to see the memorandum of understanding contemplated that very scenario, whereas, if you contribute up front, you will not be hit with the cost of sales. Of course, this has to be memorialized in a legal document once we get to that point, but at least they're on the same page we are at this point of the game. And why we're paying for the engineering or this exploration really originated back in February when we met with LUB. This came up as a means to accelerate their planning of this. Nothing was budgeted on the LUB side to tackle this at this point. So when they heard that we might be interested in helping in some way, they were able to accelerate their timeline to explore this. So this is the genesis of this particular request.
In that space, John, Matt and I went and met with Ed a couple of times since then, and I cornered Ed a little bit on the completion of this. And he goes, don't hold me to anything, but we're thinking it's going to be about 2 years from now that we'll be across the body of water that we're trying to get across, which would just about coincide, if we were going to put the tank in at the same pace, I'm sure it'd be pretty close to that.
Yeah.
And one other thing too, I've heard a lot of people refer to this as the holy grail of solutions for our wastewater problems, instead of us trying to internalize and have a standalone solution. So this is great. And I think one other thing to mention is they are under a consent decree, so they do have to do something. So this isn't just pie in the sky. They're having to move forward, and this is a great way, in my opinion, on how we're going to go about doing it. So good stuff.
While this is a great solution, it does not take in if there's a major line break between us and them.
No.
And there is no way for us to store any water or sewage, especially in large wet water events. So that is a risk that we're doing, but it's an understandable risk. So I just want to make
And I guess just to make sure we're describing this correctly, this is not a legal partnership. This is a cooperation. And all we are buying by paying $32,000, which will go to expense, because we have no asset in this arrangement right now, is basically access to the report and perhaps access to talk with the engineering firm once they complete their study.
Correct, and the opportunity to offer some feedback.
Sure,
If there's a particular outcome that looks very good or not as good, this buys you a seat at the table.
But nothing more than that at this point.
Correct.
Okay, nothing else? All those in favor of approving $32,375? 7-0. Okay. So we're actually a little ahead of schedule. We have a presentation by the IT Advisory Committee. Gonna, a little too fast?
Yeah, a little too fast.
What time, 4 o'clock? We're gonna be gone by 4 o'clock.
I can give a presentation for them if
Yeah, you might have to. I mean,
you want to do comments first and see if they drive?
yeah, we could do that. Do the 30-minute open forum now instead of at the very end.
Okay. Gary Zika, Chota Hills. Over the last 6 months, the POA and the board has discovered important information in regards to our water and sewer system. First, in regard to the sewer issue, one of the most important facts has been the startup of the POA's program to reduce I&I with our own forces. This program is just the first step needed, but clearly is showing that nearly a third of the resident collection tanks need remedial work to reduce the I&I. The good news is the near record rain amounts we've had over the last month and a half, we've not had an overflow event related to the I&I overwhelming our lift stations due to the work from this program. And that's really important. You know, Scott's saying he still have valid data yet. The proof's in the pudding when it's raining and we're not having overflows. Second is that we now know that Jacobs was instructed not to interface with LUB on sewer issues, being the sewer station overflows, due to the previous management's lack of open communications with LUB. Well, just as you guys have voted on it, that was probably the first positive step in working with LUB on an agreement to help LUB along with this project path of increasing the sewer line capacity where bottleneck presently is underneath the river between the POA sewer line and LUE sewer plant. So thank you very much for that. The third important fact is the present design of the new lift station has become obsolete from the two above facts, reducing I&I and working with LUB on bottlenecks. This leads to a much simpler and less expensive reworking of the main and neighborhood lift stations. The reasons why we did not try to reduce the I&I and believe we needed to fix all our problems without the help of our sewer and water suppliers is behind us. We must now move forward and do the right thing, which includes not awarding a contract to a single bid when nearly 3 times the amount of the engineer's estimate for the main lift station. And you guys have all said you got lots of experience, and I have a lot of experience, over $1 billion worth of contracts over almost 30 years of work, what I was doing. And when you have a bid that high out, it means something, like you've got a bad design. Now in regards to the water supply issue, we know that Jacob's design did not include key components that LUB has constructed to supplement our water supply. So the board of the POA has placed the elevated water tank on hold. The good news is the POA and board is on good speaking terms with both LUB and TAS, with both reviewing their water supplies for any bottlenecks like choke points on a hose. In addition, LUB is increasing their water treatment capacity to ensure adequate water supply in the future. The only disappointing fact it confirmed is that the original Cooper design, our developer, requirements did not include for residential automatic irrigation use. I know the board and the POA's position is we can't or we don't want to restrict irrigation times from the simple odd and even days we have in place now, but the choice is simple. Upsize all the water lines in the village at a considerable cost, or try at no cost on a volunteer basis the restriction of no automatic irrigation systems from the POA system during the peak morning hours. It should be noted that even Jacob's design showed a positive effect of this irrigation shift without the elevated water tank. And one last point is Jacobs has been the POA's engineer on both water and sewer over the 6 years. Jacobs has been willing to design, redesign, evaluate, revise on all the work to date. Jacobs' scope was to do whatever the customer wanted, as the PO was playing what is described as a time and material contract. In other words, Jacob cannot lose money and has no incentives to design the most cost-effective designs. It is time to end this relationship with Jacobs and obtain new engineers for reworking the main, Kahite, and the neighborhood lift stations, and also minor upgrades to the water system. By the way, most of these points are listed out in the TAP 2 program that our two board members, Joe Reed and Mike Lackey, had as a basis of their campaigns this last year. Thank you both for your hard work and the rest of the board for their actions. Thank you.
John, can I respond to one point there?
Sure.
Okay, in regards to irrigation, I have gone out and looked, and I had previously had this knowledge shared with me. There are significant disadvantages to homeowners in terms of requiring irrigation outside of the 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. time period. It is, if you try and irrigate at night, it promotes mold and mildew in yards and fungus. The best time for that water to reach the deep roots is in the early morning. And third point, if you try to irrigate, let's say during the day, you're going to lose quite a bit through evaporation. So I think there is very good reason for the current policy the board has in place, asking residents for odd and even, based upon their house number, irrigation throughout the week, and that's what makes the most sense to me.
I'd just like to address non-revenue water.
Sir, could you state your name, please?
John Olson, Tanasi. Sorry, Steve. The Public Works indicated that we were averaging between 25 and 33% non-revenue water every month. And based on this year's projected purchases, that would be about 125 million gallons of water that is water loss. I would like to ask the board to ask the PSAC committee to look into water losses and the sources. I think it would be worthwhile financially. And additionally, most of the underlying strata of Tellico Village is limestone, which is, of course, soluble water and will generate sinkholes and other such type things. So I think it's also a safety consideration that should be looked at. And additionally, this is my ignorance in regards to the reserve fund. I looked over some previous newsletters, and what came out, one significant difference of the water and sewer reserve is that 100% of the funding comes from water and sewer user fees. So I guess I'm just a bit ignorant of where we're getting all the funding for reserves, and if in the reserve study we could put that down so we better understand it. Obviously, I guess that was one of the big things for the user fee that we just now were able to bypass, but I don't know if that still pertains to the finances of the POA or not. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll get into all that when we complete the whole package of it.
Good afternoon. I'm Toby Henry from Kahite. First of all, I would like to thank all of the board members and the committees for their efforts. We know you work long hours to work for us and resolve problems. I just have a simple question. Original plan with Jacobs was regarding the main pump station, and it was to prevent the overflow. And without the tank, it looked like there was a 40% it was 40% ability to process the wet well capacity. It was so now with the LUB pipeline, does that resolve that issue, that concern? Is that something still being worked on?
I missed you there a little bit. Could you talk
Well,
me through that?
the design.
I didn't understand the reference to 40%.
Okay. It says the design would, for the main pump station to prevent overflows. How does design make sense when it has less than 40% of the original wet well capacity without a backup tank? So that's all changed now, right?
I think I understand what you're saying, and Scott, I may need your help just a little bit here. I slept last night, but my recollection is, absent the wastewater storage tank,
Right.
all you could really do with the main pumping station is collect the waste and pump the waste. If there is an excess, there's no place to put it. The present design envisions a wet well designed in size for exactly that. You capture it in the wet well, you pump it and convey it. I think, if I'm understanding, your sort of question about is the size of the wet well.
Right.
That
Would
is
it handle the overflow?
Correct. Make no mistake, wet wells are not are designed or intended for storage. It's not what wet wells are for. They're there to catch it. The waste should sit there for a matter of minutes and then be conveyed. What I talked about with the board is an opportunity to be able to send everything we get unimpeded all the way till its final destination.
Right, with the new pipeline.
Right. So as to I believe the public statements by the board, are we out of the woods and might we never, ever, ever need wastewater storage as a component? I don't think we've satisfied that. We're taking steps in a direction that would not require having storage, but all you could really do with the main pumping station under the present circumstances, take everything you can get and pump it and go. We still have pinch points down the line, and that's what that funding request was about.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Pandora Vreeland. I'm just so thrilled with the leadership you've shown and this reserve fund analysis that you've done and the staff here. And what a huge difference that's going to make to our community. It's just tremendous work. Nothing that good comes out of not having put in many, many hours and a lot of deep conversations. I am very grateful. Number two, I am over the moon about this relationship we're opening up with LUB and just how significant they are to us. And I hope that we are fine and good partners with them, and that literally, if this partnership works out for us, I consider it manna from heaven as far as being able to not have a wastewater tank and the perpetual expenses and all the other downsides. So I am just down on one knee grateful for this leadership. And thank you for your hard work. That's all.
Hi, my name is Larry Rolap, and I live in Tanasi and Tanasi View. I'm sure John and Scott are thinking I want to talk about Tanasi, but I don't. What I'd like to do is, at the last town hall meeting, there was a suggestion, which I thought was a good suggestion, and I'd like to have you guys think about it again. And that was to create a section of your presentation, your agenda, that talks about open items. For instance, selection of the general manager. I mean, we have a temporary. I think he's doing a great job, but that's not my decision. That's something that you have to decide. I haven't heard anything about that for a while. The signing that you've done in various locations of the village, progress, when it's going to be completed. Are you completed? Is that all you're going to do? Remember a while back we were talking about roundabouts. Are roundabouts still feasible? Is that something you're looking at? Is it something you're going to discard? I'm not making a recommendation. I'd just like to know, and I would like to suggest, again, on your agenda that you put a section called open items, and you cover things that you don't cover at your meeting, or have been covered a meeting or so before, and have not been discussed. The AT&T cable status within the village. Where does that stand in the various locations in the village? Those are some of the things that I was thinking about. Again, open items, doesn't take a long time to talk about. It may be, we don't have anything to report, but at least you bring it, you keep citizens advised about what is and what is not happening. Thank you very much.
I think we could actually address a couple of these real quick right now. Matt, why don't you give a quick update on AT&T?
We've been in some discussions with AT&T about doing better, and we've had some productive conversations, but as it stands, we have issued no additional right-of-way permits, so they're not doing anything right now. And we had a discussion in the executive session about that. They've made some offers for improvement. We need some more information, and until that information is received, we're not inclined to cut them loose any further. But for those that aren't aware, AT&T, I shouldn't attribute it to AT&T, they are the installer of record. They're not doing the installation. We had a number of significant utility impacts with both our water lines and our sewer lines. What's interesting about Tellico Village, we have a pressurized sewer system. Of course, everybody's water is under pressure. But when our sewer lines get hit, you'll know it. It goes. It doesn't stay where it's supposed to. It goes. If you have a gravity sewer system, you can protrude a piece of pipe and the sewer will leak out, but you may never know in reality. But for us, it's a hair-on-fire emergency because we're losing pressure in the system, and whatever is being pumped is not going where it's supposed to. So we're kind of on a journey with them to see if they can be more effective and less impactful on our infrastructure. And I wouldn't be prepared at this point to offer a suggestion as to when they might resume. I think if I'm to articulate the feelings of the board, once we know you can do better, we'll let you do better.
I don't know if it's actually known, but one of the issues that brought this to a head was the water line impact that flooded a property owner's house and caused significant damage. We've had, water line hits, pretty regularly that have been able to been addressed by Public Works, but this one was significant enough. I think it damaged 2 properties. So we had to say enough is enough. I mean, because they just hit water lines, sewer lines, cable lines, just on a regular daily basis. So we're working through it and hope to get them back into progress again soon. So you have something?
I'd like to talk a little bit about the roundy round you quizzed us about. The Highway Advisory Committee is working closely with the buddy at the Highway Commissioner for the County of Loudoun. They currently have don't quote me on this, $212,000 available and another $106 coming available later this year. And that'll be a proposal before the board to try to hook that up so that we can get going on it. And the area they're looking at right now is Mealacqua in the 444, but because that's a county road, while we have influence on it, we got to make sure that we can't fund it ourselves because it can't be an asset owned by the POA.
So I think, Mike, the key point for folks to take away is anything on 444 or at the intersection you mentioned ultimately is outside the POA's control. It's going to be funded by either the state or the county or some combination thereof. This is not, while the POA can lobby, it's no better than that at this point in time. It's ultimately the county and state officials. And I guess back on the AT&T, just to give a little bit of additional flavor, Matt, every time these folks went out, these folks, I mean Star Construction / AT&T, there has been a marking of where the utility lines are, where the water and sewer lines are, and they still basically have taken, shall we say, or they have mucked it up multiple times, for lack of a better description.
That's exactly right.
So it's not like it's being done haphazardly.
That's exactly right. We locate our lines for them. The state law gives you 24 inches one way or the other to locate it. We don't appear to be having a whole lot of differences of opinion as to the latitude. Like this, they're supposed to be installing it at a 2 to 3 foot. They're impacting infrastructure at 5 to 6 feet. We have a longitude issue. And You know, it's unsustainable for Public Works. Invariably, these breaks never happen at 9 o'clock in the morning, ever. It's 4:30, 4:45, 5, 5:15, and, you know, that's my employees out there, when they'd rather be somewhere else, but they'll handle it professionally, that it isn't gonna make any difference to them. But it's just unsustainable, and when something like a water line gets away from you, like it did back in May, it's cause for tremendous concern.
Matt, did you want to also talk about the signage and where we're going with that? That was one of his questions.
Are you talking neighborhood entryway signage? I did a funding request on that, could have been last month or the month before, I don't recall. But it was a request for something in the neighborhood of 10 neighborhood entryway sign replacements. The goal of the project was to complete all of those signs that are at a 444 intersection. And I think there was 7 or 8 of those, and we had 2 amenity entrances. One is the sort of flag display we have at the entryway of this facility. There's also a directional sort of monument for the Toqua Clubhouse off of Toqua Drive. And there was 1 or 2 other signs, I can't recall, that are just beyond repair. They're not at the 444 intersection that we need to get repaired. The idea at that point was we spent a little bit more than what was budgeted. The lead time on those signs in 2024 was something in the neighborhood of 6 to 9 months. So we ordered everything to finish up the project as envisioned. There are additional entryway monument signs interior to the neighborhoods. That's kind of a story for another day. That's a new horizon that my particular interest was completing the neighborhood entryway signs that have 444 intersections.
And Matt, the timing on that is first half of next year, we believe we should be complete. Is that correct?
First half of next year, and depending on when the signs show up, we could be into 2020, early 2026 for the balance of them.
That would be first half of next year.
I'm sorry. It's still 2024 for me, early 2027 potentially.
Yes, okay, all right.
Want me to leave?
Could you step out? No. Yeah, what are we now, almost exactly 4 months into this. Matt was appointed, I believe it was February 15th. We've completed the job description, job requirements, that kind of stuff. We have not yet engaged a search firm. You know, like I said, we've had our hands full, and to take on another big project right now is just not palatable. Matt's doing a fantastic job, and we're just trying to move forward day to day at this point. Yeah, and we're toying with, we're bringing back the open items website page. It had kind of gotten stale and not updated for a long time, and now we'll probably be putting things like some of these statuses on there. It'd be like the policies that we're looking to update could get posted there ahead of time. So we just had this conversation recently about resurrecting that page and actually keeping it up to date. So it's a place to go for things we're working on.
The other thing you can do is you can always post a help spot. They can give you the status on this from a help spot too. So that's a great place. If you have a question, concern, post a help spot. I understand, but if we have people on a help spot, we'll let it post.
Okay. If there's nobody else, you're going to have to give the ITAC prezo.
I will give the presentation. He's said he's on his way, so if he shows up.
You can
A couple of these guys are still working, so that's why the problem is.
Oh.
So, Okay, so Village Information System, Path to the Future. As many people know, we started the ITAC committee this year. So they've been basically, running for about 6 months. They took a month or so to get together, but now that they've been working with all the different departments and different groups and getting their feet under them and to move forward. Next slide, please. Yeah. So one of the things we're looking for a vision is, for a vision for the community, one system, one experience. I think that slide, can you check that slide? It might be out of order. Yep, go back. Go right there, current state. Current state. So one of the things we had to investigate is current state. What is the current state of our systems? So right now, as we've all been looking at, the county's been working hard on implementing the Sage Intact upgrade. That's going to go live July 1. So that project is on track. The other thing that the committee worked with is the restaurants wanted to replace their POS system. So the committee worked with the Food Service Committee on evaluating and making sure that the new POS system, Toast, will integrate with Sage. Point of sale system, yeah. PO, yeah. Point of sale system will integrate with Sage. I think that's one of the key things here is making sure any decisions we move forward with integrate and connect seamlessly. So if you don't know, most of our systems all bring the stuff and it's manually entered via spreadsheets. We have the girls in accounting are doing a ton of data entry. And, that is kind of old school. And we need to modernize and move forward with that. First off, it'll give us better information quicker, and it'll be more accurate information. So, Golf Chelsea system is functional but aging. There's been no updates since 2019 on it. So, actually, the North Star, who has that system, they have a different golf system that they're using and promoting. So, Recreation Club Automation, it's lightly used. It's not integrated with anything. And has a very similar functionality to Chelsea, just limited that application. There he is. Bruce, I'll let you continue.
There we go. So on club automation, you were just finishing with that one? Okay. The utility side for our water and sewer, this is basically installed on a custom, it's an AS400 system. It is getting near obsolescence. It's rather aging. It's got a lot of years on it. You can say it's seasoned. The manual spreadsheet interfaces, what we have found doing our kind of analysis was just about every one of the systems that we have today requires an export out of those systems as a CSV file or some spreadsheet, and then it's brought down to the accounting area, and then it's manually updated into the accounting area, into the AS400, and then uploaded again. So one of the things that we're going to want to do is take a look at how do we automate that, how do we, by automating it, it will save some time, and it'll also reduce some of the, any kind of human error inputting. The web presence from a WordPress site. WordPress is basically a system that's used for websites. It's not really integrated with other systems, and you'll see that on basically a lot of these systems here. They're all kind of disparate systems. They're isolated. There's really no integration that's in type between these. When we start to look at how we integrate that, that'll start to bring some of the efficiency in there, some cost savings and things like that. There is no mobile app at this point, so what we want to do is take a look at how do we develop or have a mobile app developed that would provide the residents a more simple way with a good user interface, user experience to be able to get to these applications. And then one of the really important things is the resident experience. Today there's multiple logins. Every one of those sites has a login, has a separate password. There's no single point where you can go like a portal to be able to access those and then be able to do all those functions from one site.
Bruce, if I can interrupt for
Sure.
just a second. I think there's a key distinction back on the utilities bullet point, there's two things there. There is, first of all, the utility in terms of the water system. But the second thing, which I think is going to be a challenge, because there's no easy application for this, is what I call the resident database.
Yep.
And that controls, as I understand it, a lot of interfaces, like, for instance, with rec, and the ability to verify that somebody is a proper rec membership, that comes back to that. So that may look like a simple line. It is going to be a significant challenge. I'm not saying it's impossible, but there's a
Right.
lot of work to do with that. So I just want to make sure
it's
we were
great.
explaining that.
Yep. Sorry, and kind of just ran in here and jumped on the mic here. My name is Bruce Givens. I am the chair of the IT Advisory Council, or committee. So thanks for that. Yeah, and to your point, we call it CRM. It's a customer relationship database, basically relationship manager. And so one of the things that we want to do is to be able to create that central point with that database that houses all of the, I'll say, identifiable resident information, so that way we can tie it across the systems. So as you log in with one system, you'll have access to whether it's a restaurant, or whether it's your golf or the sewer bills, things like that, and rec center. And that's the vision that you'll see. All right. So the strategy to get to that vision, so we have some strategic. With SAGE being, what we're doing is we're building on SAGE as that, or Intact as that foundation. One, it's being deployed now. It'll be July 1st, it'll be ready to go. So what we want to do is kind of build all these systems around that accounting system. So to your point about the billing and things like that, that's like one of the main things that we want to use as a point to kind of our cornerstone here to set things on. The fragmented interfaces that we spoke about with all those different systems, like I said, if you go to the restaurants, all the restaurants, each separate restaurant in each golf course has to bring a separate spreadsheet that then gets uploaded. So every one of these areas that we're dealing with accounting all has separate spreadsheets. We want to reduce that duplicate data to create some efficiencies across the staff, and then also, like I said before, to make sure we try to reduce any kind of human errors. Implement a digital resident portal, like we were talking about. It's kind of like a one pane of glass, so a resident can log in one time, and they can see all of the different amenities, facilities, and go from that point, so that way they can kind of have a lot easier entry into those systems. They don't have to remember all the different logins and different passwords that go in. Phase out the obsolete systems. So one of the things that we're going to have to do is take a look at all these systems. There's a lot of things that go, like we were talking about with Chelsea, that hasn't had any updates since 2019. Even though it hasn't had any updates, what we want to do is a really good assessment to find out, is that system working? Where do we put it on the priority list? Are there any risks to it? I know there's going to be some contract type questions about where are we with those contracts. We also want to look at the supportability of these systems. There's a lot of these systems that we want to ensure that if there are problems, that we can support those. And then consistent visuals and usability across. So we don't want to make sure it's not all clunky, and we want a nice, smooth feeling for the residents to be able to get in there and do all sorts of these systems. To consolidate the POS and amenity management, as you know, we are replacing Aloha with Toast. That's going to be one of those things. So that's one of those systems that will be going away. We will be bringing Toast in, which when we look at the assessment for Toast, what we wanted to do is make sure that it was, one, going to fit in with Sage as the foundation, but then we also are looking at the inventory systems. And when we look at those systems, we wanted to see what other systems could then maybe potentially in the future connect to those systems. So it's not just, we weren't looking at Toast as an isolated system, but how other things could focus and connect to that. We will look at investigating replacing Chelsea in the club automation with a single app. You know, there's some of the research that's going to have to do, whether it's North Star, Jonas, Rent Manager. So we're going to take a look at those. We're going to build out requirements for that. And then we'll base any kind of decision based on the requirements. And the requirements you'll see later, it's not just what we come up with, it's what the board comes up with, the residents come up with. What should this portal or this one system look like? And not to kind of put some kind of really dream world out there, we might get, you know, 80 or 90% with that one system, and we may have to have other systems that integrate in. Plan for a mobile app, that's obviously something that's, you know, kind of, I don't know, something we should have probably in the 2000s as a mobile app to access anything. We're going to ensure the cybersecurity and compliance. You know, we take the cybersecurity and compliance very seriously. There's a lot of residential data, whether it's PII or personal information. There's credit card information. There's all kinds of stuff. So one of the things when we look at these systems, we want to make sure that the compliance and the security is wrapped around all those, so we secure all that. And as I'm sure everybody's heard on the news, there's always breaches and things like that. So one of the things that we really want to focus on is the cybersecurity and make sure that our data is safe. Create a unified brand experience, which is important, right? It's Teleco Village. We want to make sure that it looks the same across and it brings up the Teleco Village brand. So. Okay, I'll kind of jump through these if you guys want. I can go back and hit any of these, but so what we wanted to do is kind of break these up into different phases. I would say that the years and the phases, those timeframes are very kind of general. It's just to kind of give an idea, an overview. In phase 1 this year, complete stage intact, with transition from Aloha to Toast. We're going to assess data flow between the systems. Like I said, we have all these different things between Toast and the golf courses and everything else. What we have to do is really fully understand how those pieces, not just the data itself goes, but how does the data start all the way from the very beginning to get all the way into the system at the end. So there's different pieces, like we said, whether there's spreadsheets or whatever. So we have to understand how all of that flows together. One of the next things we have to do is document that total IT spend for all the systems. We have a lot of systems, but if you don't really know what the costs are for maintaining them, supporting them, securing them, doing all those things, it's really important that we understand what those costs are. One, so we can prioritize it in the list, maybe for a replacement, or how does it integrate into these other systems. Again, we'll perform the complete application assessment. Sometimes you'll hear application assessment, sometimes you'll hear application rationalization or AppRat. What those do is we take a look at those systems and those applications, and we go through and we say, one, is this system a viable system? Do we still need this system? Is it a duplicate system? We could have duplicate systems and we could consolidate them, again, saving some money and supportability. We'll gather those new requirements for the new portal. We'll do requests for information with potential vendors. So it's going to be very important that we get those requirements, then we reach out to the vendors. We don't want to have a hammer and go look for a nail. We have to make sure that we're looking for what is it that we need, like we were saying, whether it's the resident, the board, or security. They all have to fit into the requirements, and then we'll go ahead and then we'll start reaching out. Phase 2, design that mobile app. UI is user interface, so we'll have to see how that looks, make sure it's not clunky or anything difficult to use. Have to find out what developers are out there that can do that. We'll launch that unified resident portal. Again, these years, that could slip into 27 based on the requirements and the vendors, contract negotiations, all those kinds of things. The one thing that we don't want to do is we don't want to rush it. We're not trying to beat this race or anything. We just really want to make sure that it gets done properly and with a lot of due diligence. The replace top candidate applications based on application assessment kind of ties a little bit in what we were saying with that application assessment up top. And that's, once we identify those and prioritize them, we'll look for a replacement for those and see if we can, if it does make sense. And it may just be that maybe it's something that's on on-prem or on-premise and inside Telco Village, and that it just needs to move it to the cloud and get more modernized. We'll take a look at pilot integrations of Chelsea, the club automation, just kind of like we were talking about with Toast and Sage. On phase 3 here, the full integration with accounting, we really want to make sure that everything points back to Sage. Single sign-on implementation, that is, what that does is it eliminates all users that, or residents that have to have multiple logins and multiple passwords. You'll see single sign-on, sometimes you'll see just SSO, but those are the same thing. It's to make life easier, and so you don't have a lot of passwords to remember. Replace the remaining applications that are to be retired. So once we identify those, we'll come up with those plans to how to retire them or consolidate them. Board dashboard and real-time reporting tools. A lot of this has to go into reporting, make sure that we have all the reporting needs for whether it's on the accounting side, the finance side, or just performance. We really want to make sure that we have the assets and the tools that can provide reporting. Integrate the volunteer club tools, community calendar into the portal. It's kind of self-explanatory. And then as we start to look out a little further, and some of these things, again, may get pulled sooner. AI tools for support, if everybody, AI tools, ChatGPT, Gork, and some of those other ones that a lot of folks use. You can just kind of throw the data in there, and it does a lot of the work itself much faster. Expand the volunteer and club tools, and again, the UX, which is the user experience, continuous UX improvements. For budgeting requests, the funding for the integration of those selected apps, we don't know what that number is yet because we haven't done the full assessment on those. Funding to the portal development, so once we start to figure out, get those requirements, start to figure out where we are and what their needs are, then we'll start to put those requirements together and those estimates for the funding request. And then, again, as we said, funding to replace those top candidates. So like I said, AS400, it may just be that we move it to the cloud and modernize it and increase our supportability. With our next steps, we want to just confirm the vision with the board of directors. Is this kind of where we're heading? Do you have changes, feedback? We'll conduct the POA staff input sessions. We want to get how do all those things resonate with them. Conduct the resident input sessions as well to make sure that as we start to look at those portals, are we hitting those the hot points? We'll finalize that strategic architecture plan. Basically, that means how all these systems interact and how they integrate with each other. Engage those vendors for demos and quotes, and then we'll start the beginning of the phased implementation. Basically our success, I'll say objective, is a single digital platform that improves that experience. Metrics, we'll start to develop those. And here we go.
Any questions?
Any
I guess
IT questions?
I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Oh, okay, real quick. You did good. Bruce, thank you.
Sure.
And thank the IT committee for me. But when we start pulling all this together, I mean, as I look at my apps on my iPad, my iPhone, there's constant updates. You can't hardly go a month without getting an update or something. What are the costs in that space, and will that come in the budget when you come to us as to what it would take for us to maintain this high level?
Okay, good question. So when we look at the updates, it's a little different on the iPad. On these systems ones, when we start to look at those and we work with the vendors, what we'll want to make sure is in the contract that they have supportability or that maintenance that covers the, whether it's the security or the functional patches. And I'll give you an example. Microsoft has it's called Terrible Tuesday. It's every second Tuesday of the month. We know we're going to get Microsoft patches, and those patches will get released. We'll test them, and then they'll get rolled out through the environment. It's the same thing when we look at these systems. We'll make sure that those vendors also will. Well, I hope it's not a Terrible Tuesday. Terrible Tuesday usually means because when you roll it out, it sometimes has issues, and so people dread the Terrible Tuesday across thousands of machines. But they're usually pretty solid. But we'll make sure that the vendors have that in place And what we'll look for is end of support and end of life. And so we'll make sure that where our contracts are timed on the end of support, we'll make sure that we have either a replacement ready or that we can continue on with that, and that's a viable product for the next usually 3-5 years.
I think, as I understand the world today, as we look at these applications, I'm not saying all, but many of them are going to be subscription-based.
Yep.
And so there will be a cost, a financial cost, for improving our situation compared to how we are today, where these are systems that, for the most part, we bought the first time and we didn't have to pay anything else.
Right.
So there is a financial cost. I guess the other thing that I would just raise, and I know you didn't intend this, but I don't want anybody to get the wrong impression. We already with the POA on a very regular basis, if not monthly, quarterly, do security testing in place. So we have a fairly robust and strong security review and system in place today for the POA's data.
Yeah, and we want to take it to the next level.
Right.
They do quarterly reviews right now by a third party that's all they do. So it's a very good process they're doing, but we need to, discover things on the credit card stuff. Problem is we've got like many credit card vendors. We've got at least 2 or 3 credit card vendors out there, and, we want to try to help consolidate both for financial and for security, because it's better to secure one vendor than 3, so. The other thing I want to say is the IT committee, I want to thank them. We could not afford to hire the people that are on this committee. We've got a lot of former CEOs and people that have been to major corporations here. So we got some top talent on this team that I just can't believe that we've got on this committee that are doing this for free. So, thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to echo that. Great work. Look forward to the budget proposal.
Absolutely. Make it nice for you.
I think we're all set. Thanks. Any other?
Hey, John, one item I'll just mention, going back to the water and sewer infrastructure fee, lest anybody get the wrong impression. There will still be for new connections. So for undeveloped lots, they're not going to skate free. They will still pay the equivalent of 9 months times $80 for a water connection, so that all lots are being treated equally in terms of the monetary charge that has been given to them.
Yes, true. Okay. I guess with that, we will adjourn the meeting for this month.
Thank you.
Yeah.